if we focus on solving the right problem, if we build a better product, that's the beauty of in US. I feel the market economy really give everyone plenty of opportunity if you solve the right problem, and then you don't have to worry too much about the reward from the market economy.
Welcome everybody to our show. We have today a special treat, Fengmin. Thank you, Fengmin, for joining us. We were so glad to have you here.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
No problem. So, Fengmin, we both Bino and I shared our origin stories to our audience before. It would be great to know your story. You go into details as much as you'd like to, but it would be great to tell our audience who you are, where you came from, the companies that you started, exited, and your latest venture. But let's start with how everything all started, and then what your passion is, maybe. Then we'll see where the conversation goes.
All right. Yes, I mean, I'll try to be brief, and then I enjoy you guys' questions, and I think that's always a lot more enjoyable. For me, indeed, when I grown up in China, it's in the countryside. Really, to make a better life or to do something more substantial is either you have an opportunity, maybe I don't know, join the army or get an opportunity to go work in a factory. But I was lucky enough, around 77, that's actually the beginning of the China's reform, open to the world. I happened to be 6 months to graduation from high school. And then the China restored the nationwide college entrance exam. I was given the opportunity to take that exam and to be one of the two person from my high school that was for a county level high school to actually enter college in China. Now, we always joke, this is for us, it's actually no joke, it's true. If it had not happened that way, we always say, I will be repairing Mother Earth, In China, in the countryside, you move dirt into the enclosure for the animals, and then it becomes the fertilizer, and you move it to the field, Organic farming. Yes, that's what we honestly think. So that would have been my destiny if it had not happened. And then, of course, from that point on, I really enjoyed and really appreciate the opportunity. And I went to the school called Xi'an Jiaotong University. I ended up spending 6.5 years, 4 years for under, and then 2.5 years for my master's study. And indeed, another nice opportunity for me was that time, because the China's openness, the China received a loan from World Bank, this is around 85. Actually, it was 1 year to expiration. And then the government, someone made a very smart decision, says, let's send graduate students who are going to be working in university to US, to Germany, to UK for graduate study. And I'm, again, very lucky, was able to take advantage of that opportunity that brought me to US. So I went to do my graduate study at Washington University in St. Louis. Really appreciate, a strong group, for high-speed networking. And that's where I started. And then after that, that brought me to North Carolina Research Triangle Park. I was one of those as a gigabit network testbed in RTP, and I was in a high-speed networking research group. that gave me the opportunity to be able to build and grow an advanced networking group to do a lot of DARPA research projects. So that's where I feel I'm also like a student of DARPA, and I really appreciate the success of DARPA program. Um, Doing a lot of research project actually from networking to information security, that's my start of in terms of getting into the technology. And then around year 2000, this is where the first thing we learned was there's one company doing intrusion detection get bought by Cisco, and that really gave us inspiration. We said we've been doing great research projects, building prototypes for DoD and all that. We think we can do a better commercial intrusion detection product than the one Cisco bought. So that was the beginning, really. And then an opportunity come at the end of 2000 actually. Although I got two new projects funded again by DIPA as PI collaborating with Duke and NC State, but still an opportunity come to do a startup in Silicon Valley. So that was my beginning. Then I end up moving from the Research Trunk Park to San Jose. That's it. From that point on, I think I've always enjoyed the opportunity to basically build security solutions that address the emerging or urgent needs, right, of the corporate IT's enterprise. This is where, as you probably know, for security, it's really the intersection or interaction of your infrastructure, how you do business, how the ground, right, the kind of threat elements are doing their attacks. The combination of that always creates new opportunity in terms of tools to help the IT. So that really represent my trend of this list of startups. I started with the first one that was Introvert Networks, and then 2003 we got bought by then Network Associates, and then later on called McAfee. And from that point on, I spent some time at McAfee. And then the next one is really, my very exciting. Also, I'm very proud is Palo Alto Networks. So we build Palo Alto Networks. Every product we solve new problem, right? Bring new capability. That one followed by, I actually spent some time at FireEye as well, serving as their chief security content officer, help with some of the pivoting of the company as well. And then after that one, I co-founded Cipher. Cipher is a company, again, dealing with advanced malware using virtualizations, right, to detect them. And that company was acquired by Juniper.
My goodness, everything you touch seems to be turning gold.
So yeah, I think I always think if we focus on solving the right problem, if we build a better product, that's the beauty of in US. I feel the market economy really give everyone plenty of opportunity if you solve the right problem, and then you don't have to worry too much about the reward from the market economy. And then that one quickly brought me to the next one. This is where, with a few of my past colleagues, we decided to do another security startup focusing on protecting data at the endpoints. So also representing where the threats are going, how we see the trend of the best tool. So that company is called AssureSec. But that one ended up to be the shortest time because we were in operation in about 2 months. And we were going to close our seed, but then we got convinced by the ride sharing big company called Didi. This is the one kind of competitor to Uber, if you will.
Yes,
But
yes.
they were having amazing market. It's hearing that they were having basically 15 million rides every day on the platform. That's what moved me in terms of impact, because we know how critical, how impact it is. There is cybersecurity concern and the safety concern. So I end up my team and actually joined Didi, and I end up heading up Didi's security and safety, and also Didi's lab in Mountain View. I actually helped create and build the lab. So it's been great. I enjoyed the impact I was able to make, right? Always basically building a real system, a tool that people can use. But Didi was the first one kind of whet my appetite, and in terms of, maybe the enterprise is great, but still in terms of impact, touching number of people, Didi was the beginning. So then after I was going to retire from Didi, I was trying to make a decision what to do, right? At that point, then an opportunity for me to learn with some college friends. There is this issue about food system sustainability. And the first thing that kind of hit me was knowing in US, every year from farm to table, we are wasting $400 billion worth of food. So that's really what brought me, to today. I'm doing kind of my fifth startup. I feel this should be, to be modest, that should be my last startup. But
Sure.
it's a lot of hard work, right? So it's really trying to provide the food service sector a platform that helps them to do efficient operation. Really, they have to sustain with the quality food, with profit, right? If they cannot do that, this is a whole sector they refer to today as food away from home industry. Right now we are at some schools and at some corporate dining through the food service operators, but we feel this actually have much broader applicability. So that's kind of, I think it took a little longer, but I just tried to give, a kind of
No, this is awesome.
summary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There are so many nuggets there. I'm gonna give the microphone to Binoy. But there are a few areas that I wanna double click on for sure myself.
Fengmin, congratulations, dude. My goodness.
Thank you.
I wish I had tagged along with you on each one of these ventures so I could learn. The first company, you sold it to what company? Who bought them out? Bought you out?
Yeah, that time they were called Network Associates.
Right.
On record, right? But then because they were the company, that time they already bought earlier. It was Network General bought or merged with McAfee Associates.
That's right.
Which was a antivirus company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the second one, Cipher. Who bought that one?
And Cipher was acquired by Juniper.
Juniper, that's right. Thank you. And then you had another company. It quickly
Palo Networks.
Yeah, Palo, they went. Palo went IPO. So that's by far, the biggest. It's still today. I feel it's really still the number one pure security play company, making great impact. So I'm really happy.
So so the number one question for me is, you like to suffer pain because you keep doing this. So what advice would you give? Because you keep doing it from scratch. What does it take to start something from scratch? People listening in, what two things could you give recommendations? You got to have this and you got to have that in order to make it through all the turmoil, all the worries, all the insecurities. right? And things never go as planned. So what are the two things you'd recommend, Fengmin?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think one of the things for in terms of the self readiness, um, I always want to make sure that I have my own learning and full awareness in terms of what I can do, and of course what I like to do, right? What I really what motivates me. Those two always have to go together, right? Because otherwise, it's tough. And then once you have that, a lot of the times is to keep then your eyes and your focus on that goal. You have to look a little bit further down. I think today, what I see most of people maybe um, suffer or not suffer, maybe to a strong word, but affected people is when it comes to execution. A lot of time people focus too much on the short term, which also means if you do that, and you also get easily discouraged. So almost like focusing on long term with the other word people always describe about entrepreneurs, the founders, the grits, right? I think it's almost like the two have to go together because otherwise, people, there is everyone have a limit, right? How much you can endure and you can persist, but you have to see what is the end, right? Point, and it's reachable. I mean, if you totally believe it's not reachable, that's probably you have to give up, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's probably not right. So that's where I think it's tough. I mean, it's on a case by case basis, but always. And of course, I would add one more is indeed, when you do this, it always take that minimum team, right? A minimum team, and you have to adapt. So yeah, you have to be a team player.
Yeah.
Also,
And I was going to ask you, Ike, if you don't mind, I'm
go
going
for
to
it.
ask one more here. So every time you start something, are you taking a team from the prior successful exit with you, or are you starting from scratch with brand new teams, putting them together, incenting them to join you, giving them the vision? How do you do this 4 times in a row, 5 times in a row, each time?
yeah, it's a great question. I think everyone does it differently. I mean, I'll share with you my perspective and also my observation, right? For myself, I actually probably did less in terms of because along the way I'm learning, and I was less of a, let's see, my strong suit may be less of a absolutely focusing on team building, let's say, but more from a empowering technology leadership. Of course, I'm always in the center of that key technology and key engineering mix, but it's not the team part, right? It's not my key focus. So that also related to that is most of the time when I moved on to build a new one, actually I did not, let's see, identify, right, my core team and try to make sure I bring them along. So that's just how it happened. I cannot say it's good or bad, right? It's always a balance. And then you are right. It's always, I started doing this. It ended up, I would have people from my previous team, my colleagues, they see it and they just, decide they want to join. And of course, and definitely to me, I mean, I definitely appreciate and welcome that.
Yeah.
So that's how, I mean, I would say the observation part, I would tend to see if someone is in a, let's see, an engineering, right, VP role, that's probably more, right? Either that or sales marketing, probably more, because indeed, when you do have that working chemistry and everything else, it's better. And I see people have done that very successfully, but less for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well put.
Okay.
Um,
Can I
yeah, go.
You have one more? Go
Go.
for it. Okay.
Well, here's what that tells me, that somehow or another you have consistently been able to create an environment where people feel like they can contribute and make a difference and grow the business, regardless of whether you focused on team building or you focused on the technical capabilities of the individuals you brought on board. Somehow you just made it so that people wanted to and could contribute. And that's a rare thing nowadays, because everyone's being pulled everywhere, left and right and whatever. And I have many questions, but congratulations, though. You created cultures that ended up creating enough momentum that outside entities saw the value and made an offer. That's a great thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the culture part is important, because this is where, indeed, I mean, people, you need to make sure people indeed are passionate about what you are doing. And then you are also open enough, right, to know, and so they can appreciate, they can see what role they can play. Yeah, I mean, I still try to learn. I definitely see a lot of people have good teaching. This is where, right, for example, um, power versus leadership, boss, right, versus the influencer. And I take a lot, and I also take some of them from the culture, right? Being coming out of I think it's probably more commonly an Asian and then Chinese culture, where uh, you have this. We do believe this kind of do by example and being humble. I think that sometimes initially coming to the US, to the culture, you may be disadvantaged. So we'll learn, try to, right, to be more outspoken. But there is a balance. I definitely see some of that, right? Depending on the team who you communicate. And that's definitely also another important factor there.
Thank you. Ike.
Okay, beautiful. So what I'm curious about is, like, I wanted to help some of our audience members who are doing a lot of research. Maybe they're in the university, the research assistant, they're focused on technology, like in your early days. You were able to shift from being a researcher to a business. Like, can you give our audience in that mode like some advice? Because the technology doesn't equal to a company. You know, technology needs to become a product. Needs to become a company with all the other aspects of it. And you're deep into Silicon Valley. Maybe I don't know if go raise money and focus on technology is what you're gonna say. I don't know, but tell us like how that how they should think about this transition from being a technologist to a founder, and how to scale themselves.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, if I think of my early days, probably the main motivation, I always enjoyed be able to build something that is working. So compared to someone, I have a strong passion for just scientific discovery, right? So that I think maybe there is something play a role. That's from the beginning, indeed. Enjoy building a product, building a system. And then, of course, your question is more on later. How do you look at this? And I think, aside from that passion, right? Fundamentally, what you're passionate about, and then to be successful, probably my most humble learning is about the customer perspective. So when you engage on a commercial, right, basically enterprise or venture, this is where indeed, the customer needs must ground you. Because oftentimes, I have so many young people and different people also from academic, they would be very excited. They want to do something. They have great ideas. Oftentimes you see what is missing is they do not think about the customer or the problem, right? Because sometimes the problem can be an abstract problem. So a problem could be your problem, but not a customer problem, right? This is where I think it's probably the most danger, almost like day one, right? That's something people really need to spend time, think through and validate, right? To see if that real problem exist for the kind of customer or whoever you think this solution is going to help. That become probably the most fundamental one. Then, of course, when you want to, when you have a clarity and an answer for that, and then you start thinking about what it takes, right? Uh, Probably also easy to get you beyond your own self-centered thinking, because a lot of early, I would say, founders, they don't think of that much, right, in terms of who else they would need, because they just think they have this idea, they build something, could be very cool, right, and they will be very excited. But then, yeah, it tends to be kind of affixed to this and not even think about the team requirement as well. Yeah, my observation, of course, this may happen even more. It depends on the sector, right? If you're working on something, I mean, today the Gen AI empowered thing is great. I mean, I have confidence this thing is going to make fundamental impact on us, on everyone. But then you see how it is started. Then when you have a lot of investor money all of a sudden pouring in, it encouraged a lot of young, right, students and young people, young professionals to actually jump in, because even the investors do not, for this particular sector, because it's a very strong, right, trend or hype, the investor could indirectly, unknowingly encouraging the young entrepreneurs that way as well, because they do not ask these questions. So some, and thought of it, and they could be very successful, but then some would unfortunately, right, would fall on the wayside.
So combining this with the previous comments you mentioned, you have to focus on the customer problems, right, and also think long term about the vision, so that you don't have short-sightedness. You build it for the long haul, and then you try to build the best
Good.
solution for the customer problems, essentially.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm going to jump in on this one because it works together. When you start a new business and it starts growing, do you take a role as the founder and CEO, Fengmin, or do you go and get somebody to be the CEO so you can focus on product and all of the roadmaps and the vision, as well as the engineering team? How do you've done it 5 times, you're on the 5th one, maybe the 6th one. How do you start delegating what you focus on versus what somebody else has to do for leadership and team?
Yeah, that is a great question. And indeed, that, at least for myself, it actually evolved and also basically comes with my learning, right? If I was going to look back, I probably more always just assess to say, okay, for the startup team as a co-founder, what can I do, right? What do I bring into this team? It needs to be something, I identify, I think I'm convinced myself, right? I can make that impact I'm having that critical role. So that role may not be a CEO or even an VP. I mean, I think for my first one, I would say I went in the founding team. I was leading a team of intrusion detection technology as a director and co-founder. And that's how we do it. I mean, I play that role, but then as it evolved, I probably have a lot more critical influence in terms of our overall technology, right? How we are going from, the actual, let's say, detection method, architecture to even we were using hardware acceleration. So in terms of how we use the hardware, the system architecture. But nonetheless, right, my role was coming as that and involved. Then in time, indeed, at different stage, this is where associated with my own growth, right, my impact, it's become a more higher impact, larger responsibility role, but still more technology, right? If I look at Palo Alto Networks, and I was a co-founder and the chief scientist. So I work with the CTO with Mir Zog to help with a lot of those architecture and solutions, things like that. Then only, yeah, I mean, it was not until I would say my full startup, that's the first time I basically took the CEO role. Of course, that was a very short period of time. So I didn't get much of on the ground, practice. But that's, basically depends on the team we assemble, right? Everyone's strengths and knowledge among ourselves. So we are able to come to that arrangement, and I have the confidence. But one thing in back of my mind all the time is we are always open. We have an open mind. We know some of these things I learned even although I was not in that driving seat, but I even learned right from, let's say, Palo Alto Network time. We have, Sequoia and also, in this case, Ashim Shardna, both was the investor, right? Help. But I learned some of the things there in terms of, once you are doing this thing, then the company success, right? And should be, right, the over kind of arching goal everyone is trying to achieve. And then it's very important for everyone to have that open mind to understand, at what stage and how we should do it. Do we need, right, the next right execution leadership? So that I think that's one definitely. I always have that in mind as well. Yeah.
Good job. Thank you. That was very important to hear. Ike, your turn.
But I mean, first I want to acknowledge, and I want to make sure our audience hears this loud and clear. It's definitely not about ego, your title, what you get. It is knowing yourself, what you contribute to the company, and then you take that role, not title. You take that role, and then you contribute to your best of abilities, along with your co-founders, right? I think that's that. Sometimes the glory is being so much pronounced, and the people have to have these titles. You're not gonna get anywhere unless you know who you are, and then you do your best part of the team as part of your role that you and your co-founders defined.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's why I think that's in a way probably how you can assess in terms of maturity, right? Ready for being a co-founder or not, because that mentality is very important. It's getting the things done. Whoever is the best, actually, right, can make it happen. And then that you just have to, right, when you have very limited resource. Even for the new hires, we are very clear with people come in day one. We have that communication in terms of what we really need and what are the potential, where we can go. But indeed, the ones maybe proven, let's see, less fitting, right, is the one if someone are totally bought in and very kind of strict about this big company hierarchy, because I'm kind of annoyed with this role and I must have this authority.
Yeah.
That I think is a dangerous sign for startup, right? It's going to be an issue.
Yeah, sounds good. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Fengmin, you are a technologist. You are into AI. You also have been tightly integrated into Silicon Valley ecosystem with all the venture capitalists. Can you tell our audience a little bit of maybe just in the recent years, not going too far back, how to build great companies in Silicon Valley with VCs, and what to pay attention, what to avoid maybe?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'm still learning, huh? But indeed, I mean, I would say, ideally, this will sometimes change from, the sector, right, to sector. It definitely, VCs get influenced by their LPs. So oftentimes VC friends share with us, right, in terms of they also have a limited time frame they have to make decision. That's where, when you manage people's money, you have come with that responsibility. But from a pure startup point of view, I would say the most ideal case, is if you can spend the time, right, initial bootstrapping. I mean, not necessarily means it's a lot of money, but there is a lot of prep going before you decide to do something. It will be better if you get all this learning and vetting in terms of what problem we are trying to solve. Is it right? How real? How big? Who it is? And the thing is, the more you can do at that stage, hopefully, instead of your 9 to 5 work, and then you spend the rest of your balance to actually do that homework. And the more you can do that before then you start putting things down as a pitch deck, the better, right? That's hopefully you don't need a whole lot, even the angel or seed money. And then the next one is really indeed, I think this is where the best one, when you do get that stage, you need to get some people to work, right, to create something you can show. I think it's better to leverage, start with friends and family, and then the angels, right? The angels or some of the family offices. The reason also being, just overall, because this kind of progression helps you to prove certain things, because there are certain milestones, certain things you have to answer. If you never answer those questions, you jump into a VC, right? Institutional VC. Maybe depend on the team, but in terms of optimize your chance of doing it right, then you would want this progression. And also getting to the angels might be the better one, or the family office or individual investors, because those are the folks that would support you, give you the most early critical resource. Although some of them can bring you like some support in terms of the ecosystem, but at this stage, it's probably too early to leverage that too much. So it's really the folks give you the freedom, all right? They have the trust in you, have the confidence in you, so they're going to give it for you to spend it and to move to the next stage. So, and then of course, the other side of, I mean, is they are not going to demand an arm and a leg, right?
Yes.
So both the execution freedom and I think I would say for early stage that would be the right way to do it, because at this stage you should not be relying on too much on any ecosystem or professional opinion from the investors, because otherwise that means you haven't thought it through.
That's great advice.
So that would be good, and then that makes at least the next stage much smoother, because as we see, we can observe in the last few years, right? It's really the venture market, I mean, in terms of how they are investing, they definitely become much more cautious. And in a way, when that happens, then naturally they are going to demand to see a lot more, to invest less and get a larger share. And that's just how the market is, right? And how the institutional investor manage their risk. So you have to face that reality. So that means if you can build to a significant point where you indeed can show significant uptake and revenue, then you are in a much better position. That conversation is much easier.
Yes. Great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. It looks like they're either investing in large scale the platforms that every other SaaS company is gonna use, or they take bigger pieces of the individual vertical applications, like with your, like the way you suggested, like build, have a much better negotiation power if you're gonna go that route. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I want to, with the few remaining minutes, I have to ask this question. You prepped so many companies, Fengmin. At what point do you intentionally or do you not at all focus on getting a buyer? How does the selling of the business happen? You're heads down, executing, and somebody says, "Hey, I want to buy you," or do you actually put a strategy to say, "It's about time. It's time for us to make sure that people know that we're available." What's your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I would not say, I share this with my substantial amount of data. To say, I'll share it from what I learned. I feel it's the right thing to do. For reference. I mean, I think in most of the cases, you at least I would aim for building it to grow, right? I mean, not necessarily for IPO. IPO is so hard, but focusing on, as long as you see, let's see, you see the trajectory, you see there is the market, customer demand, you can grow, and you also have a good plan. You believe, this is a good plan for going in that trajectory, then, I would continue to build. So I haven't got to the case. I felt it would be rare case. I mean, I know there are people are successful doing it. But at least I haven't got to that point to feel that's a comfort thing. I think of it in terms of how I'm going to build then with that acquisition. I know maybe there are successful people coming, from a big ecosystem, and since they are very successful, I really admire them. But in general, I would say for people without that kind of clearly defined, or you're comfortable that system, you would rather basically look at where you're going you see the project, you can grow, you should focus on building. And then, and of course, there are two things for you to decide. One is, of course, the beginning point that you think you should always engage, right? When people come make an inquiry, you want to learn what is the demand out there, what's the appetite. You should engage, let people know, and you learn. But you want to build. I mean, the only time you are really serious and devote more effort to it is if you see there are some significant roadblocks, right? And it could be either it's a market, or a lot of times it's more like a combination of the market and your team, the execution. Maybe it will be a too hard, right? A task to overcome, to switch all the engines, everything to go. That become like a total some kind of pivot. Otherwise, I mean, that's the time to actually engage more the folks, right? That is managing all this merger and acquisition. I think, you would have enough time to react to do it that way when you see some signs in terms of difficulty moving forward. I one time heard, from our early company investors, even, for the investors, I think they are very smart when they are investing in an opportunity. This is where, pretty growth later stage. Even that's one thing they were using. This as they were not going to consider IPO until they see some signs, right? Says it's about, right, in terms from their fusion of fund and for the company to grow. If they are judging the curve is going to slow down, that's when they do the IPO. So I kind of learned from that and extrapolate as well. I feel it applies to even before that point.
Got it. Thank you so much. I had to ask that question. We've run out of time.
This is great, Fengmin. I feel like you should come back 3 more times because there's like so much that you can give to young entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for your insights, stories. It was awesome to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Much
so
appreciated.
Our viewers, see you until next time. This was a great treat. Hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, man.